Yeah, it's just done it as a separate post. That's annoying.
It says it's streaming on YouTube now. Sorry about that.
I'm assuming it's a car.
I think that was a bike. Don't know.
Something with an engine.
Yeah.
Right then. Is everybody good?
I'll close the window.
Yeah.
Sam, close your window. Actually, I'm just going to share the post.
That's a good idea. Should do that.
Don't share the one on social media. Share the one that's actually got this link that I'll put in the chat. There we go. Everybody good?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, awesome. After a painful 3-week wait for round 2 of the 2021 Formula 1 season, F1 is finally back, and this time we're in Italy for the Formula 1 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Welcome back to the Formula 1 Grid Talk podcast. Today we'll be taking a look at what we can expect to see at Imola. My name is Ruby Price, and joining me today are engineering student Owain Medford.
Hello.
As well as F1 experts Alex Booth.
Hello.
And Sam Thatcher.
Hi guys.
Hey, so first, Grid Talk is now powered by Manscaped. Use the code GridTalk20 to get 20% off your first order. And secondly, it's time to give a big shout out and a massive thank you to Dramero42, who gave us a 5-star rating. If you enjoy the podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. So, Wayne, we're returning to Imola for the second time in this modern hybrid era. Given the history and the very exciting race we had here last season, do you think we could see a more permanent return?
I think so. Or like it's obviously been brought about by the fact that the schedules have had to be changed. But the fact that we've got it back on the calendar this year, when things are a little bit more normal, or there's a little bit more of a sort of concessions made for elite sport and things like that, means it sort of it looks to me as if it's coming back, particularly because of the racing it produces. Especially now that the field is more competitive, I'm happy for it to stay because I'm quite enjoying it. It's good to see the cars going around it again.
Your mic's muted, Ruby.
That's annoying. Sam, given the historic nature of Imola as well, this circuit has many, special memories, but also some very, sentimental memories. Obviously, Senna and things like that. You know, Imola, would you say, deserves a place on the calendar?
Yeah, I think it does. Obviously, it's a much different track now to what it was back in the day. and obviously the safety of it has greatly improved along with the safety of the cars. So I don't think we're likely to see an event like Senna's again if it does come back. Hopefully, obviously, but obviously you never know. But yeah, in terms of history and its prestige as a track, I think it definitely deserves to be on the list. When you compare it to like some of the other tracks that are on this calendar permanently, I don't want to go into like names like those like Sochi maybe is obviously a one that people don't really like. That is on the track on the calendar permanently. So yeah, I think it does. But it's just going to be interesting to see whether it does, because obviously, as Owen said, it's only been brought about due to the fact that other tracks can't host this year's race because of the COVID restrictions and everything. So yeah, I'm not too confident it will come back, to be honest. It depends what this weekend's race is like. We'll have to see if it's good or not. And last year's race was good, but because of how wide the cars are, it doesn't always necessarily translate into a good race. So we'll see what this weekend's like.
Says doesn't want to name any names. Immediately names Sochi.
Yeah, I only wanted to give one example, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to give any example, that's certainly a very good contender. So, Alex, moving on to the teams for this weekend. Obviously, Lewis at Mercedes obviously massively benefited from a virtual safety car and ultimately won the race at Imola last season. Do you think that his momentum from the Bahrain win puts him in a good stead, or will he be facing a lot of competition this weekend?
Well, you never need to discount Lewis Hamilton. He'll always be a factor whether Mercedes is the best car or not. I do believe that Max Verstappen and the Red Bull are the favourites, as they were in Bahrain. But Mercedes have been saying that they're not confident that they're going to be quick enough in Imola and Portimao 2 weeks afterwards. I'm not sure whether I really buy into that. I still think that they'll be competitive. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a really close competitive battle between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. Owain, Lewis being the only car before qualifying last season to not receive a warning for track limits. We are going to hear a lot of track limits discussions this weekend, especially given how monumental they were for last time out in Bahrain.
It was. I get the feeling it's going to rumble on for a long time with the sort of track limits discussion between, probably. I'll see. The problem is I don't know the names of the corners at Imola, so I can't say which is which. But the chicane, like the second to no, it is the final chicane, just before the double left-hander. Obviously that was a big sort of area of contention last year with the constant abuse of track limits and the issues we had there all through the season. But yeah, it's come to a head again in Bahrain, and I'm assuming it's going to happen this year as well. I think it's getting confusing and it's getting annoying, and it's kind of past the point of ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, indeed. They really need to sort it all out before, F1 fans and F1 drivers themselves just end up staging a revolution. Sam, Verstappen was very strong here last season. He was obviously very strong in Bahrain, and some would argue, had done enough to deserve a race win. Given the performance that Red Bull has got this season, Max Verstappen should already have one foot on that podium tomorrow, especially the top step.
Yeah, it looks like Red Bull are the clear favourites once again this weekend. They definitely benefit the most from these slight changes in regulations which are coming for this year, and using their high rate philosophy seems to be working for them really well. I think he definitely should have won the last race in Bahrain. It was in that first stint where they left him out a bit too long, I think, because they didn't really react to the undercut that Said was just playing, and of course, because of Checo's problems to the start, Mercedes were able to use Bottas as a rear gunner against Max and Red Bull, which kind of put their strategy not really where they wanted it to be, and that obviously ended up with Verstappen having to catch up. It was 8.5 seconds in the last stint, and then he just ran out of tyres near to the end. We saw him struggling with the rear end a bit in the last couple of laps, and Lewis was just able to just able to beat him in the end. But with this track, is a little bit of a different track, less power centric. So I think Max and Red Bull are definitely going to be the favourites once again this weekend. And I think it's theirs to lose. If they don't win it, I think they'll be kicking themselves.
Yeah, Alex, Sam touched on this a little bit, but obviously Sergio Perez last time out in Bahrain had a dismal qualifying performance, which then put Red Bull on the back foot for the weekend. Red Bull are absolutely going to want Checo to be, right up there. If Max is getting pole, Checo needs to be second. Or if Max gets second, Checo needs to either get pole or third or fourth.
Yeah, he does. I did think that it was going to take certainly a couple of races for Sergio to really find his feet in Red Bull, because it's a big pair of shoes to fill. You Max Verstappen's teammate. He's firmly established as that team, his team. But Sergio's a strong character. He showed in Bahrain just his talent, because he came all the way from dead last to finish where he did. He does need a better qualifying session. I think if he does that'll give him a strong sense of confidence going into the race. And I do believe that he can fulfill it. And I expect him to not beat Max Verstappen, but running closer than his previous teammates have done. And I think he just needs a good start to the weekend to get himself settled, and he can do that in Imola.
Yeah, he absolutely can. So, Owain, moving on to McLaren, they were 4th and 7th last time out. They finished the Imola Grand Prix 7th and 8th last year. Their Mercedes power unit should theoretically push them further up, but it all depends on, how the other top two teams perform this weekend, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to be breaking into. I don't think they're going to be getting between the Mercedes and Red Bull sort of battle that we're kind of expecting. But I think they'll be up there. Lando Norris had a good weekend. Well, sorry, had a good weekend 2 weeks ago. It's been quite a while, and Ricciardo would be wanting to get up there as well. I think they've probably got the strength to do it, to be honest. It's the sort of thing that they might be able to sort of sneak a podium or something like that if they're lucky, and they've got two really good drivers, and the team seems to be going from strength to strength. So I don't see them faltering really. They seem to be sort of on a roll, and it's not like I don't. It's one of those things where I think it's just going to keep going that way.
Yeah, we've kind of reached the point now where it's no longer, if McLaren perform, but it's kind of reached the point where it is now, so McLaren are going to perform. And as you mentioned as well, sneaking onto a podium, it was Daniel Ricciardo that snuck onto the Imola podium last season. Sam, would you say that it's most likely to be Daniel Ricciardo on that third step, should there be anything that goes ahead, given Daniel Ricciardo's strong performance here last year?
What, over Lando Norris, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. It's hard to say because obviously in Bahrain, Lando had an excellent performance. Very just quietly. What did he finish? 4th or 5th? I remember. 5th.
In Bahrain.
Yeah.
4th.
4th, yeah. He finished 4th there, so that was a great performance from him. I think Ricciardo had some sort of issue he mentioned. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but he had some sort of issue that he was like struggling with the whole race. But he still managed to have a great performance. So yeah, in 7th. But yeah, in terms of the podium, you got to say that if it's going to be one of those two, probably is Ricciardo, given his experience firing at the sharp end of the field. And yeah, as you said last year, he managed to sneak onto the podium there, like quite an opportunistic drive, because obviously I think it was Max who had to retire because one of his tires blew out, didn't it? And then so yeah, you got to be there to capitalize on these things that happen to other people. So yeah, I'd say I do agree with you in the fact that if it was going to be one of those two, it probably would be Daniel. But don't count out Lando, because he's into his 3rd season now, and he's like really going from strength to strength. He's sort of like maturing out of like the kind of jokey kind of guy that he was in his first couple of seasons, and he's like really improved his overall craft on the track. So if it's either of them, I'd be really happy for him because we need McLaren to be at this end of the grid again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alex, moving on to Ferrari, returning to Italy fourth in the standings is at least ahead of last year. And Sainz and Leclerc do look relatively comfortable in the car. They're not going to be challenging for the top four, but Ferrari could potentially show up if they do actually turn up as a team.
Yeah, it's clear that they do look a lot better than they were doing last year, but having said that, it couldn't have been much worse. So that's not really saying much. But yeah, it's returning to home soil for Ferrari. I mean, I don't think without the Tifosi there, I don't think that makes any difference. But with Leclerc and Sainz, it's a solid pairing. I think they drive each other on. Leclerc did really well in Bahrain, actually. I felt, and I think you could see that again in Imola. It'd be a bit much really to say that they'd be really up there. I think they're more likely going to be in the single digit points area, like 6th, 7th, 8th, barring any retirements at the front, which could happen. But it's work in progress for Ferrari at the moment, and they are on the right track. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah, they obviously have that upwards momentum that, has put McLaren back to where they were. Ferrari, obviously, as much as I'm not their biggest fan, it's nice to see that they are making strides, particularly with how horrendous it was last time out. So, Wayne, AlphaTauri, one of the other two Italian outfits, really strong last year. It looked like everything was going to line up for them, but Gasly had reliability issues and Fiat ended up finishing fourth. Gasly will obviously want to bounce back from last year and the last race weekend, given the unreliability.
Yeah, he will do. And also, it's kind of one of those things that I like. I mean, I'll be the first to sing Yuki Tsunoda's praises at this point. He is. I think from him, we'll see a sort of continuation of what he was doing in Bahrain. He seems very comfortable in the car, and if he can just hook up his driving style more often, more consistently, then that could really start putting the pressure on Gasly, who needs to kind of show something. We know he's fast, but it's one of those things where they're right behind Ferrari and not by much, and it would be a really big boon to sort of be fighting it up there with them, and they've got the talent. I think they've got the speed. I think sort of Gasly doesn't want to get sort of has the limelight stolen essentially by Tsunoda. I think he needs to sort of bounce back with a good points finish for next race. Hopefully it's just solid for both of them. Really, I think they've got the tools to do it. They just need to go out and do it.
Yeah, and Sam, it will, of course, obviously be very interesting to see how the team perform at a circuit where they haven't just spent an entire 24-hour period testing around that circuit. Do you think Tsunoda could, pull off a shock, very good high result, or what do you think is going to happen?
Obviously last year we saw him have a really good race, as you said. Yeah, that Fiat drive was like one of my drives of the season. Personally, I thought it was a great performance. As Owain said, in Bahrain, we saw Yuki just going for these daring moves down the inside of like Alonso, Stroll, Vettel, all these like people who've got so much more experience than him. He's not afraid to like send one down the inside, which is really refreshing to see in this day. And he looks like he's just got so much like raw speed in him. And obviously, it's going to take a while for him to kind of get that kind of racecraft where he's like saving his tires a bit more or giving him a bit more kind of length in a race and strategy and whatnot. But he's just got so much raw talent. It's just great to see. And it's for Gasly. It's going to be an important season really for him because he needs to make sure that he's got the better of Yuki throughout the majority of the season. And of course, with all like the rumors flying around that like Gasly's in contention for maybe the Alpine seat in 2022, it could be like if that happens, then like he's obviously going to get naturally kind of iced out of the team. alongside Yuki, and it's pretty clear that Gasly won't be going back to the Red Bull senior seat, like probably ever, to be honest, because of like helmet Marco and all that kind of politics stuff. So I think Red Bull see Yuki as like their really like bright young talent, and I think they're going to do like everything they can to make sure his development improves.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alex, moving on to Aston Martin, Vettel seriously needs a good race this weekend after a disastrous start to his Aston Martin career, wouldn't you say?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, it was just a terrible weekend in general because he ended up at the back of the grid. Aston Martin, a similar situation to Mercedes with the rate concept. They're not as it doesn't look like they're as competitive as Racing Point were. Certainly at the start of last year and the end of last year, because Red Bull have made great strides and AlphaTauri as well. So Aston Martin have kind of dropped down in the pecking order a little bit. And Sebastian Vettel just needs a good performance. He desperately needs it because he didn't cover himself in glory in Bahrain. During the race, he had a bit of a silly incident with Esteban Ocon, and his radio comments that he's not comfortable in the car and stuff like that was clear for everyone to see. And Imola's, like we mentioned before, they haven't spent loads of time testing there like they had done in Bahrain, so it's a bit of a leap into the unknown for them. For me, as a proud British Formula One fan, and Aston Martin is one of the great marks, I really like to see them do well, but I don't think it's going to happen straight away. What we need is a mistake. Lance Stroll, on the other hand, it seems to be able to keep the car on the road and bring it home, although not really in the upper strength of the points. Whether Vettel could do the same thing, then that's what they really need to do. But similar to Ferrari, I think that the best thing they can really hope for is probably 6th, 7th, 8th. I can't see them challenging that much further.
Yeah, Vettel ended up actually receiving 5 penalty points across the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend, which is certainly not how you want to start a race weekend with your brand new team.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Owain, as Alex has touched on, Lance Stroll, obviously finishing in the last points position, given how far up the team when they were Racing Point last season were performing, they were podium contenders here last season. Do you think that they've taken a step back, or do you think that it's purely just the 2021 continuation of the regulations hurting them?
I mean, to my mind, there's always going to be, when you're going to have a change of leadership, even if it's as subtle, not change of leadership so much, but just a change of sort of
identity.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. There's always going to be a sort of a bit of disruption. How do we work out and it's sort of second season syndrome as well, for Lance Stroll, for Lawrence Stroll's team. I don't doubt that they'll get up there. I think what they're sort of suffering from is a little bit of combination of the high rate concept being clearly the better option, or just the better way to deal with sort of the rules changes that we've had. But also, I think moving away from, it is very easy to copy. And once Racing Point had the setup sorted, I think, and once they got a head around how all of that, the power unit along with the setup of the car and all the mechanics of that work together, they actually seem to sort of fly. I think what they're going through is that again, but compounded with the fact that they're starting to move away from those concepts that Mercedes uses. They're similar, because obviously they are architecturally, the car looked similar, and they've made some changes to go back the way of the rest of the grid, but they're still going to have to do that all over again. I don't think they've lost the ability to set up a car. I just think it's sort of a combination of a couple of factors and a bit of instability, or just a bit of a change, and it's going to throw them off a bit. And I think they'll get back to it, but it's going to take longer than they'd like.
Yeah. So Sam, Alfa Romeo 11th and 12th in Bahrain. Do you think we have a chance of seeing some points for Alfa Romeo this season? being scored at Imola, I should mention.
Yeah, well, it's more likely than last year. I'd say that, but yeah, it's not going to be slam dunk points for them for sure, because obviously we've touched on all the other teams that are in front of them in pecking order, and they just don't really have the performance to take it to the fight to those teams personally. I think they were quite unlucky to not finish in the points last race, because they've clearly taken a step forward from last year when they were just barely ahead of Haas and Williams. I think now they can maybe latch on to the end of maybe like this Aston, as we were saying a minute ago, obviously taking a step back. So I think they've, along with like the update of the Ferrari power unit, which obviously last year kind of compounded their issues a lot, which sent to the back of the grid. But in terms of the question about points this weekend, I think it's quite unlikely unless we get some retirements ahead of them, and then it's like quite a chaotic race. And if the chaotic race happens, we could see like one of them in like low points scorers, because last year we saw like Gio was quite good at like snatching points here, there, and everywhere. So yeah, it's unlikely, but definitely more likely than what would have been the case last year for sure.
Yeah, and with the potential rain forecast for the weekend, there might be an unpredictable race. So, Alex, we've touched on this a little bit, but Antonio Giovinazzi, obviously being Italian, it gives him some form of home country advantage, even without the tifosi of the Ferrari fans and just without fans being present. I'm not sure if they are allowing fans at Imola this weekend, but is that going to help Giovinazzi get a little bit further up the field?
I think it does give him a confidence drive, because I think he revelled in it last year when there was 3 races in Italy, and he performed well at Mugello and Imola as well. And I think he will. I think he'll certainly be looking forward to it, and I think he could be in the fight for the lower end of the points, because as Sam mentioned, Alfa Romeo are looking a lot better this year than they were last year. And Gio, he's good at starts. If he can get a good start from his qualifying position, he could be in contention for a points finish. And he just needs to drive a sensible race, which he could do. And I think although there is no home fans, it's still, I think as a driver, it still gives you a bit of a boost being on home soil, and I think he'll do rather well.
Yeah, crossing over to a different sport, it was a study revealed that football teams still had some form of home stadium advantage over the end of the 2020 season. So, if it works for football, it might work for Formula One as well. But Owain, moving on to Alpine, a DNF for Alonso obviously hampered his F1 return, but he at least knows Imola well, and has given a defensive masterclass against Michael Schumacher back in 2005.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the standings. I was like, "Wow, is Alpine that far down?" And then I remember, obviously, Fernando Alonso had the brake issue, and Ocon got rear-ended by a 4-time world champion for doing basically what he's meant to do. It was just kind of a nightmare weekend. I just, I think they really need to get back on it, because it's clear that Renault's putting a lot of money into this, even if it is obviously branded as Alpine, and they just need to get going. Otherwise, it's going to be sort of calls for new drivers, and Esteban Ocon's no slouch, and Fernando Alonso knows he's going to be called old hat, which is clearly not the case. They need a good weekend. They really need a good weekend to get them above where they are, because they're below Aston Martin, Mercedes.
And we were saying how horrendous Aston Martin weekend was, but at least they got that 1 point. Sam, obviously, they'll be wanting that 1 point to get themselves back up, because as Owain mentioned, Renault are pouring a fortune into that team. And as of yet, other than 3 podiums, they still don't really have anything to show for it.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Like year after year, we're saying, "Oh yeah, next year Renault could challenge the top teams." Oh yeah, next year, and then it always seems to be that they can't make that final step forward into like the constantly challenging for podiums and titles, everything, because that's ultimately where they want to be. And I think Alonso's like kind of come on a record saying that this year's kind of going to be kind of maybe like a break-in year kind of thing for the team, and they're focusing a lot on next year as well, like many other teams will be. But you still need to give it your all for this year, I think, and you can't just like spend this year like driving around in like the lower midfield, not really influencing the race at all, because we saw Alonso getting stuck in with like Vettel and Kimi in last race, which was great to see, like quite a throwback to years gone by. Obviously, he didn't finish the race. Ocon, I don't really remember anything he did in the race other than getting hit in the back of the car by Vettel. So, yeah, it was a really dismal weekend for them, as Owain said. Owain, sorry.
No, you had it right the first time. You had it right.
Yeah, so it's going to be, as you said, it's going to be a very important year and weekend for them. And as earlier, Ocon needs to do well this year because, as I said earlier, Gasly might be in the running for the seat next year. And when you consider like Ocon's background and where he's come from, like you really want him to do well because he's like not one of the few drivers on the grid that hasn't just like come from money, and like he's really worked hard to be where he is. So I really hope he does well this season. Sure.
Yeah, and it would be nice to not see Alonso, just completely ruin the chances of another person from the Mercedes. I think he was part of the driver academy, but
yeah, I think he still is a Mercedes contracted driver, and he's on loan at Alpine for. Obviously, this is his second year of the contract, so next year he might be out of the seat. Who knows? But yeah, we'll see what happens this year. Yeah, hopefully he stays in the seat.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Alex, let's move on to Williams. It's going to be a struggle for them given their, supposed aerodynamic deficit to their competitors, and George Russell will certainly be hoping to avoid any embarrassing moments behind any potential safety cars again this time round.
Well, George Russell being the sort of guy he is, I think he'll have put that to bed, and he won't be thinking about that at all. He seems that sort of character. Williams are another team. It's a bit similar to Alfa Romeo. They don't look as far back as they were last year. They seem to be able to hold their own a little bit in Bahrain. Both Russell and Latifi. I think probably the best they can hope for is trying to get out of Q1, which Russell managed several times last year, and he did in Bahrain as well. Latifi wasn't quite on. Well, he was on Russell's pace for a lot of qualifying, but then Russell got in there at the end, and both of them finished the race. It'll probably be business as usual for them in Imola, but unless we get another one of those chaotic races that Sam mentioned, then who knows? Russell could find himself in a similar position again, and with extra knowledge, he'll learn from his mistake, and he won't make the same mistake that he did last year. So yeah, Williams, they've recently got improvement in the technical department, which Russell himself has said. He said it's the first time he's even had a technical director in the time he's been there. It's looking brighter than it has been, but it's a long road ahead for Williams.
Yeah, and with Jenson Button now joining the team, if it is going to be wet this weekend, Owain, you would be expecting a man of the wet talent of Jenson Button to, be passing on the knowledge and experience that he's got to those two drivers who are relatively inexperienced.
Yeah, as much as Button will have a lot to say, I think Russell's got an ability, to be honest, to do it in spades. We've not really seen him win a wet race too much. I don't think there are only a few, so we haven't actually got that sort of long list of races to actually see what he can do. But it's one of these things you kind of expect it from a driver his talent to just be good when going gets a bit slippery. Latifi, yeah, we haven't seen too much of that. But he doesn't he doesn't look like the sort of person to stuff it in the wall at the first sign of rain. But now I've said that, he probably will, which is a bit unfortunate for him. So I do apologise if I curse that. Yeah, I think I think they're decent talents. I think Williams have got a good sort of foundation with those two driving, and as Alex said, they seem to be going. They're on the up and up, and they don't look as far away as they used to be from the pace.
Yeah. And Sam, moving on to the team currently occupying the last tier of the standings, Haas. A Haas car spun on lap 1 of the 2020 Imola Grand Prix. I think it's highly likely that a Haas car will spin on lap 1 of the 2021 Imola Grand Prix.
Yeah. Last year was obviously not the fault of the Haas driver that got spun. It was Seb that went into the back camo, wasn't it? And this year, obviously, it might be the fault of the driver that will remain nameless, as we've agreed. But yeah, Haas, obviously, yeah, we saw Mick spin in the last race as well. So it just looks like that car's kind of a bit of a dog to drive. Really, it doesn't seem like there's just any kind of pace in it that's going to keep it to the field. And they've come out and said that, like, they've kind of admitted, oh yeah, this year's kind of like chalked. We'll just like move on to the next one, like just focusing on next year completely, and that's fair enough. But yeah, it's going to be pretty dismal for them again this weekend. Yeah, Mick did well to finish the race last season. I mean, you can't last race, sorry. You can't really ask any more of him than that. Yeah, I think he just needs to spend the year just driving around, getting used to the car, and just like seeing the checkered flag as many times as possible. And if by like some like sort of like miracle they get into like the points paying positions, that would be good. But yeah, it's going to need to be a mental race for them to be anywhere kind of near the points. Even with like the crazy strategy calls they pulled off last year, like netted them a few points. But yeah, I think the car's even worse than it was last year. So yeah, it's going to be another drive around on a Sunday afternoon for Mick this weekend.
Yeah, and Alex, Sam's already alluded to this, but obviously given the lack of development in that Haas car, other than a miracle, is there anything that you could see potentially giving them a way of getting off that back row of the grid?
Under normal circumstances, no, because I expect Haas to probably even be a further disadvantage because neither Mazepin nor Mick Schumacher have driven at Imola because there was no F2 race there last year. So that already means they're even less experienced than the rest of the field to begin with, and they are in the slowest car. So it's not really the best ingredients. The first thing they need to do is just iron out the mistakes. I agree with Sam. I think that car just is not very good to drive because obviously, everybody was quick to criticise Mazepin straight away. He had a lot of spins in testing and the race, but Mick Schumacher did the same thing on the opening lap. So the car must be not. Clearly, both of them aren't particularly comfortable with the car. So it'll just be trying to finish the race is what certainly Mazepin needs. Schumacher did manage to finish, and it's just a case of keeping it on the black stuff. And if there is several retirements up front, then who knows? Maybe they could look in. But I think they're definitely the back row of the grid, and with Haas already saying that they've pretty much finished the development for this year's car already. Then it's quite a barren season ahead for them. It's a shame to say, but it's unlikely that they're really going to make much progress.
Absolutely. So moving on to some predictions for this weekend. Owain, would you please give us who you think is going to win?
You know, I think I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. I'll be honest. I think he'll be riled up after last weekend. I think he'll be sort of determined. Not last weekend. Oh yeah, a few weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's like
it has felt like a very long
such
time.
a long gap. It's like another pre-season, mid-season sort of break. And no, I think Verstappen will want to, like, he'll sort of view Bahrain as the one that got away, and the Honda Power Unit's more powerful. The car's clearly much more competitive than it was, and it looks like it can consistently compete, rather than just sort of take the odd fight. And I kind of see Mercedes on the back foot. I'm sure they'll prove me wrong, but you know, I think that's my prediction.
Sam?
Yeah, it's I don't want this to kind of get kind of like we're all predicting like the same thing here, but I think Max is definitely is my pick to win the race this year, next week. Sorry. Their car around this kind of track will be super quick, I think, with their new engine, the philosophy, and everything like that. So I think Max will win. But you can never count Mercedes out, as we all know.
And Alex?
Full house, I'm afraid. I think I'm going to say Verstappen I predict he'll take the victory. Closely followed though by Hamilton. I expect it to be a close fight again. And if we're doing a full podium prediction, I think Perez for third.
Finishing off the podium, which is the next question that I would have been sending around, but just to finish off, Verstappen would also get my prediction for being on the top step, given, you know, that car's just pretty good around circuits like this, and, you know, as long as he stays on the circuit with all four tires, and all tires last the race, he's got a good chance. So, Wayne, following Alex's trend, who takes the second and third steps of your podium?
I think second is going to go Hamilton. I don't really bet on him not being in the unless he has a massive issue. I don't really sort of bet on him not being on the podium in some capacity. I'm thinking Perez, actually. I think Perez in a Red Bull is probably better than Valtteri in a Mercedes for third.
And Sam?
Yeah, I just want it to be not a combination of ham bot verbot ham bot ver ham or whatever. Just I don't want it to be a combination of that. Like, yeah, I think Lewis will definitely finish second, and then I'm going to go with Checo to get his first podium for Red Bull this weekend as well. I'm
going to take a bit of a gamble, and whilst also putting Hamilton second, I'm hoping that Daniel Ricciardo might get that third step, just because we've said it before, it'd be nice to get McLaren on that podium, and, you know, there's a very long straight with a very good corner, and that's what kind of works for Daniel Ricciardo. And the McLaren is obviously better than the Renault for that kind of thing. So who knows, really? Let's do some bold predictions then. Owain, what's your bold prediction for this weekend?
I don't know, Yuki Tsunoda for the win. There we go.
That is extremely bold. That is very bold. Jeez.
Watch me be right. Be right.
I wasn't expecting it to be that bold.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a bold prediction that would overwrite your podium prediction. But go on then, Sam.
Given how we were just saying how bad Haas is, I'm going to go with Haas. One Haas to get in the points.
One has to get in the points. Now that will be bold. Alex?
My bold predictions always overwrite my podium predictions anyway. I think my bold prediction, it doesn't sound bold on the face of it, but given that we've all been singing Verstappen's praises, a bold prediction will probably be that Perez wins, I think, and takes Red Bull's first win of the season, while everybody was tipping Verstappen to do it. So that's my bold prediction.
My bold prediction is going to be that there's going to be no complaints about track limits during the race. Because
Good luck with that one.
yeah, that's certainly going to be an interesting one. But that is the show. So, we are available on Verbal as well as Amazon, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search F1 Grid Talk. We have a huge back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and race results. We are on Reddit. Search for the subreddit F1 Grid Talk. And we also have a Patreon for mics, lights, and better recording equipment. Also, make sure you subscribe so that you're the first to know when each new weekly episode is released. We'll be back at the weekend to review the results from the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Thank you very much for joining me, Owain, Sam, and Alex.
Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
And thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Afternoon.
And we are staying live on YouTube, so do not go away if you're still watching. Leave us something to talk about. But first of all, I'm actually just going to talk about the fact that before this show started, I saw that the Canadian Grand Prix might be under like some stress to get ready. Well, not ready, but to actually happen this season.
Yeah, I saw that as well. Is Turkey being touted as the replacement? Isn't it? I believe. Or am I wrong about that?
I don't know.
Right? Okay. I think it's Turkey. I saw it on Reddit.
Oh God! I'll put my neck on the line and see. I think I probably saw it at the same place as you. I'll stick my neck on the line. I think I saw that as well.
Yeah.
I think chances are, with 23 races, I think the odds are that at least one of them, would become under threat from the obviously what COVID's the challenges are facing from it. Canada being a temporary street circuit is one that's most likely to suffer. Although Monaco are adamant that they're going ahead and that they can do it.
Oh, they've been in construction for weeks.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's not exactly as if France have to worry about managing traffic, given that they keep going into lockdowns. But, as much as I enjoy the Turkish circuit, it just goes back onto my whole ethical thing of it being yet another, not great country hosting another race on the calendar. But, it would be a shame for Canada to not happen. But, after the race we got in Turkey last season, could be another very unpredictable one if that does go ahead.
Yeah, the thing with Canada is as well, like their weather obviously gets like really extreme during the winter months. So there's no way they can go like race in Quebec in like October or November, is there? Because it would just be far too cold and snow and everything like that. So they've got a very limited. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, what do you mean you don't want to see that?
I mean, I didn't say I don't want to see it, but they won't do it. If you know what I mean.
I'm going to try and tempt Formula One to hold a Grand Prix, and
that would be funny to see. But,
I'm trying to tempt Formula One to hold a Grand Prix now.
That's why it's always been hard to run Canada back, because logically it would make sense to run Canada under a normal calendar back to back with Austin and Mexico. But the trouble is, Austin and Mexico are at October, November time, and it's far too cold in Montreal to run a race there. Whereas it's too hot in June in Texas, so it's not great from that point of view.
Wouldn't it be like wasn't it a back-to-back weekend with Baku as well? Wasn't it?
Yeah, that's not helpful either.
Which is logistically a nightmare.
I remember when they used to put that in the middle of the season, like sort of mid-June. I've invented a month.
Hybrid month.
Lousy June weather.
Jadoon.
George has said in the comments of the stream, Canada will be a loss. Great circuit, but safety has to come first. Turkey isn't a bad replacement, but doesn't produce that many great races. Nürburgring or Mugello would be a better replacement. Any thoughts on if we were to go to Nürburgring or Mugello instead?
Well, I'd love Mugello. I mean, I would rather we're at Mugello next week rather than Imola, to be honest. I think Mugello's a better circuit. I think Imola's just a bit too narrow for modern Formula One cars. If I'm being perfectly honest, it's got a lot of history and that's probably the reason why we're there, because it's great to look back on. But I just think Mugello was great to go to last year. It was a really novel thing to do, and it's a great circuit. So to see that back again would be nice.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I'd much rather be having the Mugello race next weekend because that was a good race. And yeah, the whole ethical thing, it's quite a big subject to kind of go into, isn't it? It's like kind of a whole podcast you could do on that kind of thing.
Maybe we could start something that runs parallel to
I just want to say it isn't, because it doesn't matter apparently to Formula One or the FIA.
It doesn't matter.
They're going anyway. They're going to go there anyway.
Say.
So what the hell do we do? Like, all we can do is sit here and criticize.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what we say, because at the end of the day, it's all about like which country can give them the most dosh, isn't it?
Yeah, last time I checked, my bank account didn't run into the trillions. So
yeah.
Was Canada supposed to run back to back with Baku, or have I got that wrong?
It was last year. It was meant to be last year because obviously they both got cancelled. But last year, that was definitely the case.
I'm going to, from a logistical point of view, then it would probably make sense to put Turkey next to Baku because Azerbaijan and Turkey aren't too far apart.
Canada and Baku are supposed to run back to back.
Wait, is that
France being 2 weeks afterwards?
Wait, okay. So is that? Sorry, which order is that?
This season. Azerbaijan, then Canada, then France.
Oh, that's weird. Because normally, what do they do? Is Monaco before then?
Monaco is 20 to 23rd of May.
I always remember Monaco being directly preceding Canada, which was always a bit weird.
But it was always 2 weeks apart. It was never back to back. So.
Well, yes, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, because Monaco on the F1 game, it's always you go from a really hard track in Monaco to an amazing track to drive around in Canada. So that's how I remember them two being back to back all the time.
I always enjoy driving around Canada on F1.
But you're going to say you enjoy driving around Monaco, and words were going to be said.
You can just send it through the last chicane, and it's just great. But yeah, Canada will be a horrible loss if it doesn't happen, because I always really enjoyed that race. 2019 was hilarious because of what happened with Vettel and at the end of the race with him changing the number 1 and 2 boards. Yeah, so but I think that, obviously getting into another subject here, but that was a correct penalty to apply at the end of the day, as much as people didn't like it.
I mean, to offer up the platform for a debate, does anybody have any further comments on Vettel's 2019 penalty?
Well, at the end of the day, it shouldn't have happened because a 4-time world champion shouldn't be making those sorts of mistakes. That's what I said at the time. And if he'd not have done it, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do we think Vettel still has it in him to compete at the highest level of Formula
I don't. I think he lost it when he was at Ferrari.
Yeah. It's going to take him a little bit of time to bed into Aston Martin, as we said. But I kind of agree with you, Ruby, that he's certainly not in his prime right now. Past it. But,
I just think he's tired. He had so much so young because he came in at a very young age and he had all that success. He was a 4-time world champion by the time he was 26. And he's been in it for 14 years now, which as a Lewis Hamilton, but Lewis has had more success later on. And it's a shame for Sebastian because he seems like a lovely guy, but it's just that I think Leclerc coming to Ferrari really put his nose out of joint, and he's trying to get a new lease of life at Aston Martin, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be the move that he thought it was going to be, and but he seems to want to carry on himself, which is it's nice. It's nice that he has that in him, but it depends. Aston Martin are going to want results, and if Vettel has another season of numerous mistakes, then they're not going to be happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, when Vettel signed that contract to go to Racing Point, Aston Martin, they were, one of the best teams on the grid. Not consistently, but in terms of how their car performed, it should have been, finishing, second or third, pretty much every race. This season, they're I think it's 6th or 7th in the standings, and it's just been one mistake after another if you include pre-season testing. But George thinks that Vettel has lost his mojo and his hair.
Stress of being a Ferrari driver.
That's great. I do really like Seb, but I think he's a family man as well. He's got like 3 kids. So how much longer does he want to do this? Like, he's got all the money in the world. So he doesn't need to worry about money ever again. So when does he just say, "Oh, I'm going to spend some time with my family now"?
I think it's just because he loves it. Yeah, he just doesn't want to.
He loves racing. Yeah, he loves racing.
I mean, it must be nice to be paid to drive Formula One cars. Like that seems like a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously.
You don't even have to go testing as much as you used to.
When you've been doing it for 15 years, I'm sure it becomes like any other job. Oh, maybe not any other job, but it's.
I mean, it's sort of a hobby for some drivers.
Yeah, yeah. Kimmy will still be going in 20 years' time when he's 61.
It would still be fast.
Yeah. It'll still be hilarious, just even then.
I was just checking if there was any more Formula One news that
James Allison stepping back to a new role inside Mercedes as less of a technical.
Yeah.
They've got a new technical director because he's moving away from that, and I imagine that's budget cap related. It's going to be a good set of years for road cars because all these manufacturers are having just across a lot of motorsport are actually having to move around a lot of engineers out of the motorsports program. It's great.
Could that be a move to like kind of like groom James Allison to become the eventual team principal in a few years' time if Toto decides to step away from the day-to-day
That's
operations?
a good suggestion, perhaps, actually. Become more involved in other aspects of the team so that you can then learn them inside out. And when Toto eventually decides, hey, I only just want to continue being a third investor in this team rather than also having every single decision, being mine, you've got someone who can step in. When Mattia Binotto stepped up as the Ferrari, team principal, it was seen as a really good idea because he'd obviously been involved in Ferrari for so many years and at different levels. Maybe that's what Mercedes need to be lining up with.
I don't think they want somebody like Binotto. That didn't work out so well for him.
Yeah.
Well,
not yet.
It was working well at first when Ferrari had a car that was allegedly illegal.
I think we all know it was illegal. I'm not like... I don't care. I don't care about upsetting Ferrari.
We try to not upset people on the show, and we probably do. It's like Top Gear. Back in the day.
I mean, it's Ferrari. they're like Apple. Like, if they don't like you, they don't like you.
No.
The news. The Miami Grand Prix looks like it could happen.
Yeah, it's inching towards.
Oh God,
doing it. I want to see that. I want it to go away immediately, but I want to see that.
Not on that circuit.
I just don't understand why we need another race in America, to be honest, because America and Formula One just doesn't mix. It never has done. It never will do.
Because Liberty are trying to get all these new American fans, aren't they?
Drive
to Survive. Drive to Survive has helped that.
Got to get them Benjamins.
Yeah, like with the popularity of Drive to Survive, they're obviously going to get a load of people who didn't even give the sport the time of day before, and a lot of them might be American because of how dramatized ETS is. So with them doing more races in America, it's obviously going to get more fans there.
And then because of DTS, they're going to be like, what's all this other boring crap that's going on in, where's the boring circuit? Sochi. All of those others.
Sochi again.
Well, if there's a circuit that shouldn't be on this calendar, it's definitely Sochi. Not including all the others.
Yeah, it's trash.
No, I've said many times. The only way that you could really get a large American fan base is if you had an American driver and a good one at that.
Logan Sargent, that's the only one.
Yeah, he looks like he could potentially get there.
When was the last one?
Alexander Rossi, which was a missed opportunity, I thought.
Yeah.
So he won the Indy 500.
He did. He won the Indy 500 the year after he was in Manor.
Yeah, and when you get a shot on a team like that, it's you're never gonna really do well. So
you say that Daniel Ricciardo started in
HRT
and he's a several-time race winner.
Yeah, well, that's obviously. And then Alonso started Minardi, I guess.
Raikkonen started in Sauber.
Yeah, I mean, they can't all be Lewis Hamilton or Charles Leclerc, where they sort of rocket up into good cars.
Yeah, but obviously not all drivers are as talented as these people we're talking about. But,
I think Lewis Hamilton was enigmatic in that. Like the fact that he managed to get into a works McLaren at the peak of its competitiveness is ridiculous. What are the odds?
Yeah. Well, he was.
And then he still managed to win when that car was not very good.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it was the car. I just mean like, you know, he completely bypassed the standard career path for getting into Formula One.
When people say he only wins because of the cars, like, or he managed to win in a
slow
in
2009.
Yeah, exactly. He managed to win races in a McLaren that was kind of trash. So.
And a Mercedes in 2013 that was just like, oh, I've got those tires. I'll have them for lunch.
Yeah.
On the American point, George has said what happened to Logan Sargent shows that Americans don't care about F1. He finished second in F3 and couldn't get the backing to get an F2 seat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is he in F3 this year?
I
think so.
don't know, but you know, it would seem that Russians care more about, you know, how badly you perform in F3 than, well, how potentially good you could be in F1, despite not really. But yeah, the Haas car just saddens me, because I rooted for Haas when they first showed up. You know, they showed teams that you can join F1 and be competitive, but then they just never did anything with it.
Well, I think they lost because at the time when Haas joined F1, they had a lot of support from Ferrari, but then Ferrari invested more in Alfa Romeo Sauber, so they weren't necessarily the main feeder team to Ferrari, which I think they thought they were going to be, and that's kind of put them on the back foot. And then the dreadful power unit that Ferrari had last year didn't really help, and they just need the money to survive, and it doesn't really, I suppose, really matter where you get it from as long as you get it.
And now they've got even less sponsors than the god-awful McLaren Honda did.
You know, I don't think they'll be wanting for money somehow.
No.
Yeah, it's just going to be a case of like how long the team's actually called Haas for. You know, it could be the end next year. They could be
stop watching.
Depends how long Gene Haas wants to put up with it, with his team being at the back of the grid.
It doesn't look good.
I'd say not long.
I think the writing's on the wall there. I think he's, you know, there's a handover period, and apart from that, he's gone.
We're going to see a similar thing as to what happened with Force India Racing Point. Yeah, it's not going to be Haas for much longer, and someone who's already got a controlling. Well, is it a controlling stake? I don't know. We need Gary for this, but you know, you just need him to get bored, and another billionaire is going to purchase the team entirely.
Cash is king.
No, if billionaires want to purchase teams and spend a lot of money on them and, you know, sort of blow it away, I don't think I mind too much, as long as the team still exists.
I think, you know, if you're going to spend that much money on a Formula One car, at least hire a driver, you know, that can perform. Don't just put your son in because, you know, daddy's got a Formula One team.
Yeah, the thing is, though...
You're never not going to do that, though, are you, I suppose?
No. But, like...
Now cursing my dad for not being a billionaire.
If has to go out of business, I think that's so many, like, jobs that have been lost, like, as well. So it's hard to say.
We do want to see them on the grid, but we don't want to see them, you know, trailing around at the back of the grid with all that investment to do nothing.
It's going to be like Midland F1, isn't it?
Yeah,
they were Russian. They went away.
Everyone's waiting for 2022 to see what the new regulations bring.
But, yeah, they're going to be so off the pace this year, so it's hard to really know what they're going to do next year till it comes around. But you don't see them just jumping straight to the front of the field, do you? So we'll see.
Has anybody else seen any interesting discussion points?
There was the rumors, or Kevin Magnussen said he could have gone to Toro Rosso in, I think it was like at the end of 2018.
I saw that.
But then after, obviously, and Haas again, obviously Haas in 2018 had a really good year, didn't it? That was probably their best year in the sport. So he probably thought, oh yeah, this team's on the up, I'll stay here. And then obviously in 2019, the whole Rich Energy saga happened, and then last year they were terrible. Now he's out of the sport, so he's probably kicking himself about that. But yeah, that was another thing I saw this week. The truth of it, I don't know. Might be.
I think a lot of people have been saying that they had a chance at getting to a different team.
Yeah.
But it would be unusual for Toro Rosso to take someone outside of the Red Bull family, given that team's purpose. But if Red Bull can do it.
Well, at that time, though, for 2018, they resorted to bringing drivers back in from the program they had before, because they brought Brendan Hartley in, and then for the year after they brought Alex Albon, who'd also been a Red Bull driver before, and they dropped it from the program and then got him back again. So I think at the time it might not have been such a surprise to see Magnussen sign for them.
Yeah, because obviously Albon was going to be racing in Formula E in 2019.
Yeah.
Up until like 5 days before he signed for Red Bull. So obviously they were desperate for like drivers. So it's not far fetched.
Wasn't that because Dan Ticktum didn't get enough points for a super license or something along those lines?
Probably had, I don't know, probably crashed into somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't he win the F2 race in Bahrain?
Well, there's 3 races, weren't there? There's 3 races now.
No idea.
Okay. So Gran Yu Zhou won the feature race, I believe, and Oscar Piastri won one of the sprint races, and I can't remember who the other race winner was. It was 3 different winners, I know that, but I don't think it was Ticktum. I think he
finished on the podium, didn't he? Ticktum. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think he was involved in crashes. Shock. But
still is.
I believe he was involved in a few incidents. But
yeah. I would have expected like it to say win when you do a search for it. But nah.
No, I don't think he won a race. It was 3 different winners, but I don't think Ticktum was one of them.
Fair enough. I think.
Of course, yeah. Now there's like a 3-month break between like the F2 races, which is just terrible, really.
Yeah, it is an interesting way of having a race calendar.
Yeah, because you're just going to forget about everything in that time. It's good that they got the W series on there. That's really good to see. That would give that a lot of exposure.
Especially given, how little exposure there actually are of women involved in Formula One, at least we're seeing some form of, women in motorsport, and the fact that it is a possibility, with the W series. But, it was something that I had meant, like, it was glaringly obvious with Drive to Survive, there were 2 women in, like, on show in Drive to Survive. The female journalist, I can't remember her name for the life of me.
Jenny Gow.
Yeah, her.
Yeah, she's brilliant. She is really good.
And there was the tiniest cameo from Claire Williams, and it's like, now that Claire Williams is no longer the deputy team leader of Williams, there's no female team principals on the grid anymore. After Manisha Kaltenborn's gone from the Sauber team. Yeah, it's just a bit of a step backwards for diversity on the grid, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a glaring obvious issue in the whole kind of...
In the whole sport?
In the whole sport, yeah, like not just in the staff, but obviously in the driving as well and everything. But yeah, Formula One's has obviously always been a rich man's kind of sport, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
and
But,
it will continue to be.
That doesn't need to be always the case.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't. It shouldn't be. In this
And
day
as
and
well,
age.
going back onto Drive to Survive being, a way of the Americans seeing Formula One, if Formula One are using Drive to Survive to, show F1 in a certain light, that's not just rich white man sport. You can use Drive to Survive to show that image if you put people in those positions. There's more than one female F1 journalist. I can name 3, including. I can name 2, not including what's her name?
Jenny Gow.
Jenny Gow. Yeah. I was gonna say that, but there's someone called Jenny Gow in a TV show that I watch, and I was like, it can't be her. But there's Rachel Brooks, Natalie Pinkham, Jenny Gow. There's 3. We don't need to see,
Don't forget Susie Perry.
also Susie Perry.
Claire Cottingham.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. We don't need to see footage of Christian Horner from the previous season of Drive to Survive when you could just get someone it doesn't matter if everyone's only getting 10-second cameos as long as everyone's getting 10-second cameos.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just a bit more, interested. Well, not interested, but pushing for this thing than some people in the sport.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's not much we can kind of do about that.
No.
Let's kind of point it out and try and hope that they notice. But
Yeah.
they probably won't.
But on that note, I think that's enough for the post show. So thank you very much to everyone that's stuck with us. And thank you 3 as well for some very interesting and helpful contributions to the show.
No worries. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
No problem.
If you're still watching, make sure that you come back next weekend. There's going to be hopefully a very interesting race to talk about, and we will hopefully be providing coverage for that. Well, we will definitely be providing coverage for that. So,
Yeah, don't say hopefully. God.
Yeah. You never know what might happen. But anyway, thank you very much. And